Hello and welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Joe Concha filling in for Steve today. I'm joined once again by the Malzberg panel, this time with co-host of Steele and Ungar on SiriusXM and columnist for Breitbart.com and American thinker, C. Edmund Wright. So what do you guys think? You know, is Obama's low approval rating the nail in the coffin as far as Democrats in the midterms?
I think you just gave Edmund my radio show. I think I heard you say SiriusXM co-host. Edmund, congratulations.
I think he deserves it, actually. Or maybe you guys could host together.
Well, there you go. There you go.
That was good, yes.
What was the question?
Well, first I was going to ask, you know, Gallup came out with a recent poll around the president's approval numbers, and they came in at 38%. That's the lowest of his term. So is that the final nail in the coffin as far as Democrats in the midterms?
Oh, I think that, frankly, for the midterms, no, not necessarily. I think the midterms are going to turn out to be a bit of a surprise in the Senate. You're seeing things happen right now that I honestly didn't think would happen. I've been predicting all along that the Republicans would gain the Senate. I'm far less sure now. Obviously, the House is not going to change hands. So, no, I don't think that the president's ratings being as low as they are, and they're low, is necessarily what's going to be the deciding factor here.
Interesting. Let me change gears because this is the start of the NFL season. It started last night. Seahawks 36. I believe it was the Packers 16.
Seahawks are looking great.
Well, yeah, well, you know, they'll repeat. You've heard this here first, guys. But it seems like for whatever reason, this story just keeps popping up, and it will not go away. As a guy who studies media, who reports on media, I can tell you that this story is media-driven because here's what the polls say, and I'm talking about the Washington Redskins, by the way. And should they change their name? Should Daniel Snyder be forced to change their name? And poll after poll, particularly a recent ESPN one, says that 7 in 10 Americans, 71%, say we don't want the name changed. And you even talk about season ticket holders in Washington or around the D.C. area, and all of them say the same thing, don't change the name. Yet we keep seeing story after story, whether it be on ESPN, whether it be on the cable news network, saying, you know what, what do you think? Should we change the name? So, you know, I'll start with you first, Mr. Wright. So where do you think all of this is coming from if the polls keep saying no one wants it changed?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned story after story on ESPN, and you have all these commentators for CBS and ABC, NBC coming out and saying they're personally not going to use the name Redskins. A couple of newspapers, some prominent newspapers, have done the same thing. So it makes you wonder what that 71% would be without all of that media attention and pressure the other way. I mean, it's probably 90% if you took away that media pressure and the fact that people don't like to appear to be racist and bigots to pollsters. This is a non-story. It is media-driven. I've been writing about the nickname police since the 1990s. When they first went after the University of Massachusetts Minutemen. See, this is the problem. That's glorifying a bunch of white guys with guns, but somehow it's insulting to have Native Americans as a moniker. I mean, it just makes no sense. The nickname police can't make up their mind, but they're never going to stop because once they stop, they're out of business.
Rick, there is a business aspect to this as well. That if you were to change the name, then nostalgia for the old Redskins stuff. That's no longer part of the team. That's something that certainly would add to Mr. Snyder. He's the owner, Daniel Snyder, of the Washington Redskins, his coffers. And then obviously whatever the new team name is, then everybody's going to want to get a piece of that as well. So is it in Daniel Snyder's best interest, financial interest, to change the name?
If it were me, I mean, look, I have some sympathy for those who may be offended by the name. I get that. But I look at it much more from the business point of view. I'm an old licensing and merchandising guy. And to me, if I own that team, I would absolutely say, you know, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm going to give into this pressure and I'm going to change the name. Redskins merchandise. If you have the name the Redskins on the jersey, it's going to go up huge. You're going to see a huge increase in volume and sales. And then you've got a brand new brand, a brand new name to begin marketing from scratch. Man, and think about all the press that's going to get. It absolutely would fill his pockets if he were to make that move.
Speaking of filling pockets, Daniel Snyder bought this team, I believe it was back in 1998, for about $800 million. Wow, a lot of money. Now it is worth $2.4 billion. He's tripled the value of this team, despite the fact they have been largely horrible during his tenure, during his time as owner. I believe they've only won one playoff game, yet they're always top 3 in attendance in the league. And And what we see outside of Redskins games every year, despite this big controversy, despite this apparent wave the media keeps telling us about people being angry about the name, not one protest, not one sign of people saying, you got to change the name, because it doesn't exist. So I guess that's my question for you, C. Edmund. If there aren't any protests, therefore there's no bad PR, and revenues keep going up for the Redskins, attendance is still strong, and all the gear is still selling, what would compel, outside of the reasons and the good reasons that Rick just gave, Daniel Snyder to ever change his name?
Well, there doesn't seem to be anything that's going to compel him. He seems very firm in this. I would like to touch on what Rick said about the business angle. You may get a little bit of initial sales with a new logo and a new nickname, but come on, when he paid $800 million, and if someone else wanted to pay $2.4 billion today, a lot of that would be in what is called goodwill. That's how businesses are sold. And guess what? The goodwill is all in the name Redskins. To force a man to change the name of his business, regardless of the business, regardless of what you think of the man and his ownership style, is just, that's un-American. And that's what the political correct nickname people are trying to do. Now, to your last point, no, there is no outrage. The outrage is Mike Greenberg and a few other weenies at ESPN and at CBS. There is no outrage.
All right, but let's look at this. I certainly understand the point about valuing goodwill. Don't think I agree with you that the goodwill in that team is attaching so much to the name Redskins as it is to their quarterback, who they're putting so much faith in terms of value of the franchise. So I'm not sure I agree with you there. Plus the fact that as Joe said, they're the third highest selling ticket seller in the country. That's where the goodwill comes from. So I'm not sure that that's the case. What worries me a bit, though, is when you see NBC sportscasters who have the nighttime games, the big money, big rating games.
Sunday night.
And well, they also have Thursday night now. So when you see that and they're not willing to say the name, if I were the owner, this would give me some pause, because again, I think that robs some of the goodwill. I'm not saying rightfully or wrongfully, but it does rob some of the goodwill you're talking about and tend to devalue it.
Let me just jump in, guys, just to correct things. So, see, Evan, I'm sorry, let me just jump in. I have to correct Rick, and it'll be a pleasure to do this. So, yes.
What did I get wrong?
NBC did have the game last night, because
it's not going to be
have opening night. There will be a Thursday night game, but that will be jointly produced by CBS and the NFL Network moving forward. So you were
I stand corrected.
10% right.
I stand corrected.
As far as that. But see, Evan, go ahead, make your point.
Well, again, I think Rick and I are talking about two different things a little bit. He's talking about a potentially financially beneficial reason to change the name, and I guess you could make a case for that, though I think on balance that's not correct, because you're throwing away 60, 70 years of history, and you take a hell of a lot of jersey sales in the first year to make up for that. But the other thing is, regardless of whether it's a good decision or not, nobody should force any business owner to change the name of his business because they're pretending some people are offended by it.
Well, nobody is forcing him. Nobody's forcing him.
The media, Rick, I think the media is...
They're trying to, but they're obviously not forcing him. He does have the final say. I would actually take your point much better. If you were to say that the league was forcing them and they would have that power, I would take your point completely. But the fact is, no one's forcing them. Yes, there's complaining about it.
The pressure certainly is there from a
obviously
media
not
perspective.
forcing them.
Yeah, ESPN Outside the Lines, right? They did that a couple nights ago, and certainly it should have just been said, change the name of the damn team now. They should have just titled that special that. But this is where I take issue with the Bob Costas of the world. You bring up Mike Greenberg before Keith Olbermann, whoever it may be. These people that have been in broadcasting for 30, 40 years, that have had bylines and microphones and could have spoken out about this. Costas came into sports in the 1970s, and he had all this time to say something during all the Redskin games that he broadcast, and he didn't say a thing until last year, because it became a Me Too mentality, that some other sports writers were saying they should change the name to be politically correct, and then other ones jump on board. Now the Washington Post, their editorial board, won't say Redskins in their paper anymore. The sports pages will, because they know that their fans still want the name being said, but the actual editorial, because they write so much about sports, will only call them the Washington team. And that's what we're seeing here. Political correctness run amok.
But by the way, it's not the first time that teams have changed their name, if they were to decide to do it. The Browns left Cleveland, went down to Baltimore, suddenly they're the Ravens. it's not like this is some unheard of thing. I would agree
Right.
with you if you say the reasons that are being pressed are new.
See, Evan, we got
Right.
about 30
Yeah.
seconds, so
Go
we'll
ahead.
wrap it up in about 30 seconds,
but
please.
when a team came back to Cleveland, they were instantly the Browns. So actually, in a way,
They were.
that doesn't even fit your argument. It fits my argument. But I
they
don't think
changed their
any
name.
team with the history of the Redskins or the Packers or anything like that has ever changed their name. A few high schools have, a few small colleges have. No big time name that I can remember, nor should they.
That's right. Yep, and I don't think it'll happen anytime soon if Dan Snyder's words are any indication.
Yeah,
He says
I
it
agree
simply
with that. It's
will not happen. Guys, thanks for being here. And up next, the best of Give Me Five. But first, we're going to talk a little bit more to Rick Ungar.